Hi, this is Chloe here at Inner Whispers. Today I'd like to do a review of The Zombie Tarot by Stacey and Paul Kepple. As you can see, this deck, which is published by Quirk Books, comes in a very nice, very large and stable box, which is pretty amusing in and of itself. It has little bits, I don't know if you can see that clearly. In the event of a zombie attack, get to a secure location, open this box and consult the Zombie Tarot. Insight and ammunition for surviving the undead uprising. High caliber divination. So it's very nicely presented, very nicely packaged, and inside of here, if I can get the box open, even the inside of the box is also amusing, designed to look like a bullet case or a case of bullets. And there's also a companion book instruction booklet, which, although it's small, it's kind of card size, it's quite detailed. There are scans, red-toned scans of each of the cards, and a little description, which is always amusing and yet also useful. There are keywords, and each suit, the scans are in different colours, so that we can find them easily and clearly. There are also little fake adverts in the back, and some spreads and so on at the front, as well as a little description. It says, "Remember when it all began? With that spill of toxic sludge out on Route 195? And those poor motorists complaining of headaches and blurry vision." So it kind of gives a background story, shall we say, to the deck and the ideas behind it of there being a zombie revolution, an undead uprising. So a nice little book. How about the cards then? When I first saw a few of the cards online, I wasn't really sure whether I would like the deck or not. I'm not a big fan of having lots of writing, and it feels like the images are a little bit busy. Not a clear, concise image perhaps. And yet, looking at them in more detail, the writing is relevant to the card meaning and amusing as well. And there aren't all that many cards that have this. So, although I thought that I might not like the deck, in fact I found that it is extremely good. There's a very amusing take on a lot of things, like being bored with being just a housewife when you could be a brain-eating, blood-sucking zombie. And self-determination in the sense of blasting your way out of things. There are some quite unusual takes on the cards. This sort of thing as well I found a little bit busy, but I think once you take the time to look at it, it's not an image which, for example, necessarily jumps straight out at you because there's quite a lot going on. But then, because there is quite a lot going on, it has a lot of layers, a lot of depth. There are some very funny takes on things, and that's definitely a strong point of this deck. It has a very good sense of humour. And I also like that there's quite a lot of variety in terms of the colour palette. As it said in the book, the idea is that it all started in 1956, and so the whole feel of the deck is very retro. We have these symbols at the four corners. These ones here on the diagonal represent the suit, in this case ones, which are represented by bones. I don't know if they're thigh bones, but that's what comes to mind. And the number in a kind of crosshairs targeting gun type thing. For the majors, we have the number up here, and it says Major Arcana. For the minor arcana, it actually says Minor Arcana down at the bottom. Cups are represented by skulls. And pentacles are entitled hazards, as in the toxic sludge that slid out. The traditional meanings are still very much present here, for example, the Emperor being about rules and defending the family. I really like this sun card up in the sky above all the darkness and the zombies. Swords are represented by machetes. And that definitely looks like a hard time to be going through. Many of the images are quite non-traditional, but looking into them deeper, they definitely do represent normal kind of Rider-Waite symbology, like here the Two of Cups. Even though they're eating completely different meals, they're still sitting together at table, so even though one's a brain-eating zombie and the other is a normal human being, it's about making that connection. When I see this card, the song "It's the End of the World as We Know It" rings through my mind. And I have to say there are a couple of cards which are quite unusual. For example, the Three of Cups with this wedding picture. It's like it feels like it should be the Four of Wands or the Two of Cups. The Seven of Swords is quite unusual as well. I normally associate this more with trickery and deceit, whereas she's being quite upfront about saving herself at the expense of anyone else. And I don't quite get why the Eight of Swords is kind of imprisoned within a rib cage. Maybe it's about the trap of being human. The Three of Pentacles as well is quite unusual. I don't really see anything about teamwork here. Throwing a bone for a sort of dog-like zombie thing? I don't get that one, I have to admit. In fact, there are quite a few unusual Pentacles cards. The Six of Hazards or Pentacles is normally about charity or giving and receiving, whereas here it's a kind of carrot and stick, getting someone to do something that you want through offering them a reward. And the Eight of Hazards or Pentacles, often the Apprentice card. Unusual, but it does open up a lot of different possibilities for us. The Court cards also are quite particular and different. The Wands cards are all chewing on bones, and I don't normally think of the Queen of Wands as being a kind of nurse type person. I see her far more fiery and get up and go-ish, but it's interesting to have that kind of perspective. In the Cups cards, all of these people, zombies, are carrying brains around, which of course, the brain or the skull is what the zombies want to eat, and it's what nourishes them and inspires them. Quite the femme fatale, our Queen of Cups zombie. And the King of Cups is drowning in emotion. Interestingly, it's only the Swords Court who are actually human. All the others are zombies, including the Hazards or Pentacles courts. Gun-toting to face up to the zombie uprising. And then back to the pentacles, hazards, we have more zombies again. So I think these Quirk cards have quite a lot of depth and are quite interesting, offer a new perspective on the Quirk cards. There are also quite a number of cards that I think are just absolutely lovely. The Fool walking into a graveyard when there are zombies about. The High Priestess is quite spooky and yet beautiful. The Empress, nurturing and nourishing even when it's a zombie child. The Hierophant is TV, it's just so 50s. And the Lovers, all about choices. So there are a lot of cards here which are really very interesting. The balance between brains and heart. And this little inset of what's actually going on inside the tower before it crumbles. I really like the Moon card as well, with this key, the idea of our dreams being the key that opens up new landscapes. So these cards offer a whole new perspective on a lot of the archetypes of the tarot, still staying within traditional ideas so that the deck as a whole is quite easy to read straight out of the box, but obviously reading the keywords and especially the amusing little paragraphs for each card in the book will also help deepen your understanding, as will working with the deck, getting to know it. I think this is just great as a more modern take on the idea of preparing for battle, needing a rest. I find this card really evocative, actually. So this has been a look at the cards of the Zombie Tarot. I didn't expect to like this deck, but actually I think it's really funny, really well designed, quite easy to read out of the box, and there's a great depth to a lot of the images, a lot of the ideas and concepts. So it's a deck that I would highly recommend. I also wanted to mention the backs of the cards are non-reversible, showing this zombie in a strange headdress. And the card stock is quite thick, so that the sort of deck as a whole is almost a little bit too big to hold entirely. I find it easier to shuffle on the vertical because of that. So the cardstock is quite thick, but therefore quite sturdy. It's nicely laminated, not overly slippery. So good quality cardstock, if a little bit thick. I hope you've enjoyed this review and found it useful. Please come back again soon, and in the meantime, listen to your own inner whispers.